Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakaputrubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha. Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presta Bhutale Srimati Kadambakana Swamin Iti Namame. Hare Krishna, devotees. So this evening we're going to focus on some thoughts and some instructions actually from Srila Prabhupada in relation to the departure of the spiritual master and how to see it, how to react to it, and how to move forward after it. Because this material world, and particularly this part of the material world, is called Mrityu Loka. It's the place of death. It's almost like no sooner is someone alive, but they're dead. Or if not that exactly, but certainly as soon as someone's alive, they start dying. And the disappearance of everyone, this is an inevitability within this material world. That's one of the fundamental truths which Lord Krishna establishes right at the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. Right at the very beginning, his first instruction is essentially along those lines. So, but what to do in a case like this? How to deal with this situation? It's not easy. Having made a big Prabhu, you were in England at the time, and Prabhupada left as well. Yeah. So we've been through it, and, so to speak, come out on the other side. Here we are. Engaged or trying to be engaged in devotional service in Srila Prabhupada's movement, and basically we are engaged and happily engaged, generally, and fully engaged, sometimes more than fully engaged. Yes. So we've already been through that. And I don't know if there is anyone here, right? Oh yeah. Bhakti Churu Maharaj is passing. You were here, I suppose. Right. So you know what it's like. The basic idea, sure. It's really quite something. But there's famous verse from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, which perhaps all of us have heard before. Some of us may have heard many times, but it's just so relevant. At least, shall we say, as a starting point to consider the subject. He reasons ill who thinks that Vaishnavas die when thou art living still in sound. The Vaishnavas die to live. and living, try to spread the holy name around. Like I said, famous verse, as I understand, he wrote that particularly in relation to Srila Haridas Thakur. Thank you, Hare Krishna. Yes. So, in a nutshell, you could say that's our perspective. And, of course, the capacities of different of us, including particularly under these types of circumstances, our abilities to be able to just absorb that and just take it in and adjust like, yeah, okay, that's it. So therefore I'm going to be in that sort of consciousness and just come through. Coming through on the other side, Sure. On the other side. Actually, one disciple of Kadamba Kanana Maharaj, who I know quite well, he's French, lives in Reunion, which is part of France, near an island near. Yes. He contacted me this morning he contacted me on, Messenger. And I, trying to be, you could say, sensitive about it, and definitely being concerned about it. I said, how are you doing? Are you all right? Can I help? And he just immediately sent a copy of a statement that Kadamba Kanana Maharaj made just a few days ago, apparently. And perhaps you mentioned it last night about, or somebody did, a change of service. It's a change of service. In other words, it depends on one's ability to really deal with it. But on a certain level, you can say it's just a change. Just a change of service. Yeah. And that was his attitude. And knowing him as I do, I could, at least I got the idea that that's how he's seeing it. Really, it's just change of service, more or less kind of, there we go. It's not such a big thing, because he's that sort of person. He's he's really nice, and devotee of many years' experience, but he's sort of a tough person. Yeah. So there's one story I'd like to tell you. It's a very interesting story, and it's a very nice story about Lord Ram and Mother Sita. That Lord Ram and Mother Sita, Lord Ram was sent into exile. Mother Sita decided she was coming with him. He tried to stop her. She just insisted, and that was that. So they actually, at one point, they ended up in Navadweep, Lord Chaitanya's place. Of course, this is a long time before Lord Chaitanya's time, really long time. So they were there in a place, in one of the areas, one of the islands called Modadrum Dweep. They were there, and one day Mother Sita saw that Lord Ram was sitting in meditation, sort of the traditional, I can't do it, I'm afraid, due to physical disability, but, sitting down cross-legged as most of you are, but like this sort of, meditational, classic meditation type of position, something like that. So Mother Sita saw that Lord Ram was sitting like that, but he had a big smile on his face. His eyes were closed. It's like he's absorbed in meditation. He's sort of in another world even. But it's a good world, and he is really happy, big smile. And was it that you were meditating on? I could see that you were ecstatic. And Lord Ram said, yes, it was such a wonderful meditation, just so wonderful, that in the future, in the Kali Yuga, you and I, we will appear just in this area here, Navadvip area, and we'll be together again. And Sita's very happy. Oh, yes, we'll be together again. That's wonderful. And Lord Ram said, and we will give everyone love for us. And Sita was just really happy, really happy. We'll give everyone love for us, and it'll just be ecstatic. So Sita's really happy. And then Lord Ram said, but the best thing is that in the course of this, I am going to give you the most wonderful gift. And Sita, she's already inspired. Now she's just, oh, really? What are you going to give me? And Lord Ram said, yes, I'm going to give you the most wonderful gift. Love in separation. That when we are, and she's thinking, now, what is this? And Lord Ram said, yes, when we appear together, we'll be together for some time, but then I will leave you and I will take sannyas. And you will be in separation. And Sita said, oh, that's terrible. What's nice about that? What's so special about that? And Lord Ram explained that love in separation is the highest taste. And that's part of Lord Chaitanya's teachings, our teachings. How many times Prabhupada talked about that? So Lord Ram said, yes, it's the most ecstatic experience of all. It's better. It's a lot better than being together, love in sort of union or togetherness. It's a lot better. And Lord Ram said, I wanted to give it to you now because it was his arrangement to go into exile. I wanted to give it to you now through my going into exile. But you insisted on coming with me, so I couldn't. But when we come that time, I will take care of that. I will take sannyas. Then you can't come with me. Otherwise, we'll be Mr. and Mrs. Swami. And it's just, it's not done. It's just not possible. So in this way, I will make sure that you get this experience of the most wonderful aspect of Krishna consciousness. love in separation. Viraha bhava, it's called. Viraha bhava. So, Mother Sita, anyway, we mentioned how she reacted. And it's understandable. Of course it's understandable. But still, the point is a fact. The point is a fact. And it's one of the cornerstones of our philosophy, that love in separation is the highest ecstasy. Now, when we're sitting as, well, we all are, including myself too, but particularly the disciples, and we're feeling the separation and, haven't digested it, or it's still like the system, the internal system is shocked. It's completely understandable. It's not just understandable, but it's only natural and to be expected. But the thing is that Krishna consciousness is a very deep science. It's very, very deep. And it's a transcendental science. It's not a material science. And we know how in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna chastised Arjuna because Arjuna was concerned about what's going to happen when people die. The soldiers are killed in the battle. What's going to happen? Different things will happen. And it's going to be very painful, and just so many problems will be there. So, but, well, let me read one verse, and short purport by Srila Prabhupada. You can make a note if you want and look it up after. It's Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, chapter 28, verse 47. 4:28:47. And it's part of the story of Paranjan. For any of you who are familiar enough with the Bhagavatam, and it's the story of a king named Malaya Dwaja, who has come to the point in his life where he just wants to give everything up and go back to Godhead. And so he, according to the description there, it sounds like he just voluntarily just gives up his body. And his wife is there. She is the daughter of the king of Vidarbha. And so she reacts. And Prabhupada, the story goes over a number of verses. Prabhupada at one point says that the king represents the spiritual master, the queen represents the disciple. So this verse then, 4:28:47, is as follows. Being now alone and a widow in that forest, the daughter of Vidarbha began to lament, incessantly shedding tears which soaked her breasts, and crying very loudly. So Srila Prabhupada gives the purport. It's not long, it's several sentences. Figuratively, the queen is supposed to be the disciple of the king. Thus, when the mortal body of the spiritual master expires, his disciples should cry exactly as the queen cries when the king leaves his body. However, the disciple and spiritual master are never separated, because the spiritual master always keeps company with the disciple as long as the disciple follows strictly the instructions of the spiritual master. This is called the association of Vani, words. Physical presence is called Vapu. As long as the spiritual master is physically present, the disciple should serve the physical body of the spiritual master. And when the spiritual master is no longer physically existing, the disciple should serve the instructions of the spiritual master. So, up till now, for the disciples of Kadambakana Maharaj, up till now, the relationship has been both Vani Seva and Vapu Seva. Both things have been there. For what it's worth, which, may not be that much, but it's something, is that how many, ask me, ask Madhavi Prabhu, ask Mataji, how much time have we spent in the physical association of our spiritual master? Particularly for the two of us, it really wasn't that much. A minute and a half. Well, in terms of personal, like face-to-face alone, yeah. For me, it was about 5 to 10 minutes on one occasion. Just me and Srila Prabhupada. Yeah, and a whole thing about Gayatri Mantra, and I'll tell you all the story sometime. It's kind of amusing, but instructive. Otherwise, classes, we were in, I think, quite a number of classes, or some number. Yeah, but he would come regularly, on his way to India from India for some days, and I was there. Not for that long, but a couple of years while he was doing that. So, I know disciples of Kadambakana Maharaj, he gave a lot more personal association than a few minutes on one occasion. He gave a lot more, but still, when you consider, the last however long you've been connected with him, what percentage of the time were you in his physical presence? It's small, isn't it? I think it's really very small, actually. But, anyway, I know there is a type of reassurance, you could say, something like reassurance that spiritual master, even though he's not here, particularly like here, like right next to me, or even just in Cape Town, but at least he's somewhere and he's contactable. Like that, there's some sort of reassurance. So, okay, that's a point. But even in the physical presence of the spiritual master, generally, for someone who's trying to take it seriously, generally the main type of association is through the instructions anyway. Yeah. That we've all got instructions, and even personal instructions in some cases, otherwise they're general instructions, and we remember those, and we carry on in Krishna consciousness on the basis of those. So, on the whole, even at, you could say, the best of times in terms of
getting personal association. The main association is actually through instruction. Yeah. So Prabhupada, right in the beginning of the introduction of Srimad Bhagavatam, right before he begins the introduction, he offers a dedication to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. He lives forever by his divine instructions, and the follower lives with him. You can look it up, it's there. He lives forever by his divine instructions, and the follower lives with him. So this is a transcendental reality. The importance of the instructions, not just in the sense of information gained through receiving instructions, but through presence. It's a form of presence, and it is the most important, and it will be the longest, sort of standing of the type of association we're going to get. The thing is now, though, that the physical association, the Vapu association, other than pictures and like that, and remembrance, well, anyway, other than pictures and remembrance, the Vapu association is not really there much. I mean, definitely not as much as when you can actually meet a person and speak to them and discuss things and like that. So, in other words, now the relationship has gone on into, I would say it's like a different phase of the relationship, a different era. The era of the personal association, face-to-face, sometimes, at least occasionally, that era is over. But now, the era of the Vani Seva, the Vani association, is now the predominant, and that's the nature of the relationship. You may be aware that Prabhupada on a number of occasions was asked, how did you do what you did on your own? And every time, to my knowledge, Prabhupada answered, I am never alone, but my spiritual master is always right beside me. Even, interesting little point, when Nelson Mandela first visited the Radharanath temple, he came twice. First time was shortly after he got out of jail. He wasn't the president yet. Second time he was the president. So I showed him around the Radharanath temple and telling him about this and that and so many things. And we sat down. We came into the temple room. He bowed down in front of Srila Prabhupada. And we went across to the other side, like diagonal to where Prabhupada's sitting on the Vyasasan, kind of on the first set of benches on the left side of the deities. And so we're sitting there and talking. And he's looking across at Prabhupada, and he asked me, how did he do it? Alone, he asked me. And I said that he would, when asked that, he would say, I'm never alone. but my spiritual master's with me. And Nelson Mandela somehow seemed to grasp it a little and nodded his head, and it struck him. So the thing is, it is a change of era, and the change of era from the era of the personal, where personal association is very prominent, to the time when it's definitely not as prominent at all, and in a certain sense, there isn't any Vapu association, or, if there is, it's kind of in indirect senses, like just remembering. So, in that sense, the passing of the spiritual master, it means a transition. It's a transitional point, just like there's some scars. There's some scars in a person's life. Some scar means some sort of event which takes place when there is a transition in a person's life. A few days ago, as we do quite often, we did a Ana Prashna Samskar, first grains. Up till now, 6 months usually or so, child has not eaten any grains, nothing. But now, child's going to start eating grains. So there's a ceremony to sort of drive it home that, look, your life is changing right now. Or, first day at school is a samskar. Or how about marriage is a samskar? That's a real samskar. I mean, that's a big change. That's a big change. So, the passing of the spiritual masters also, got the effect, it may not be in the list of, there's certain number of official samskars, but it has that effect because from being in a situation where the personal association is really very prominent, and maybe for some it will be the most prominent feature of the relationship, at least very prominent, but now it's not really there. Certainly in that sense of actual face-to-face and discussion and all that, it's not there. So, but again, don't mind me saying, look at Madhavi Prabhu and I, we're still here and we're happy in Krishna consciousness. And Mataji Gunamai, I think too. Yeah, she's smiling. Because there's life after the spiritual master departs. There really is. However, let me tell you one thing that, it's a very important aspect of this whole phenomenon. When Srila Prabhupada left, some number, like quite a noticeable number, of his disciples who were very close to him and interacting with him personally on regular basis, quite a number of them, they weren't able to digest his physical absence. And so, a significant number of them, I don't really, maybe none of them just gave up Krishna consciousness, but definitely quite a number of them, they ceased to play prominent roles in Prabhupada's movement. Shri Shri Nitai Mayapur Chandra Ki Jai. So, they ceased to play prominent roles. Some of them, a few of them, were GBC members, sannyasis, well-known people in ISKCON. But to serve in separation without that, the direct personal association, they weren't able to digest it sufficiently. Whereas others, interestingly enough, people like Madhavi Prabhu and I, who had not had much personal association at all, and I'm not saying it was just, easy to digest, but because it really wasn't. But at least we digested it, and we're still here. So, as a transition in life, there's certain things which need to be digested, accepted, and sort of adjusted to or entered into more than when the spiritual master is physically present. And kind of the essence of that is what Prabhupada said and what Bhaktivinoda Thakur says. He lives forever by his divine instructions, and the follower lives with him. To really imbibe the idea or the transcendental fact that he is still here. And, he has not really gone anywhere. On a certain level, it's even possible to say, this is not an absolute point, but it's like a little food for thought sort of idea, that the physical presence of the spiritual master can be a little sort of even almost misleading, that this is the person. Because, who of us are our bodies? I'm extremely happy to say I'm not my body, because as someone told me just a few days ago, and I thought, wow, that's brilliant. What was it? Not just like old age is tough, but anyway, it was to the effect, I forget the exact words, but to do old age, you got to be really tough. And I can tell you, to do old age, this is it. Old age is not for sissies. That was what it was. Old age is not for sissies. Believe me. And when I heard that, I thought, wow, you really got it. Because it's true. It's really not for sissies, my Lord. It's amazing. What an experience. Old age is not for sissies. So, So, like I mentioned about these disciples of Srila Prabhupada, they couldn't adjust, and they couldn't embrace the separation. And the whole idea of now we are serving in separation, and that's what we're doing. We are not serving in physical presence. We're no longer serving in physical presence. We are serving in separation. So, the good news, and it's really good news. I mean, it's just amazingly good news, is that the more we can accept it, first of all, we just got to maybe bash it into our little heads a bit, or, somehow or other tell ourselves, come on, we got to accept this and get used to it. Something like that. But then gradually, gradually, I don't mean over years, gradually, but over weeks. I mean, it depends on the individual, of course. As the idea is accepted more within the heart, and one starts to experience the fact, then, it's kind of revolutionary, actually, that, wow, it's actually true. He's here. I'm feeling his presence. And, it's like it's a breakthrough if we can really, if we can really take this into our hearts on a deeper level and really accept it. Have faith, because, faith is such an important part of Krishna consciousness. Yeah, to have that faith that actually if I serve my spiritual master on the basis of his instructions, I will be in his presence and I will feel that. Actually, the first time I experienced that, it was quite some years before Prabhupada left. It was actually it was Janmashtami 1973. Prabhupada was installing Radha Gokulananda in Bhaktivedanta Manor. I was staying in the Berry Place Temple in the center of London, but I was the temple commander, so-called. And it means I was sort of second in command, or whatever you'd call it, after the president, who was Prabhu Vishnu Prabhu. And so the morning came and devotees were getting ready to go, and the question came up, who's going to, because this, we're going to have, it's Janmashtami. We're going to have a whole program in our temple in the center of London. And indeed we did. The place was packed out. Oh yeah, it was packed out. So who's going to go out to Bhaktivedanta Manor to be with Prabhupada when he installs the deities? And I remember Prabhu Vishnu Prabhu, he's Irish, Northern Irish. My name at the time was Raghubear. He said, Raghubear, one of us is going to have to stay. Take a wild guess which one had to stay. Yes. So at first, it was like, oh gosh, why me? But then, I'd only been a devotee like 7 months or something. But I'd heard this. The spiritual master is present in his instructions, in his service. I'd heard that and I thought, yeah, okay. It must be true. Prabhupada said it so much. So let me just try and sort of come to grips with it. And honestly, really, within about half an hour, I was really meditating on this point. Within half an hour, I was feeling, yeah, I'm in Prabhupada's presence. I really was. And it became, a foundational point in my Krishna consciousness. And this was some years before Prabhupada actually left this world, that I was, really living with this idea. And, it's very deeply satisfying and strengthening. Sure. Truly amazing. So to all of you, of course it'll be difficult. I mean, when Prabhupada left, the temple, I don't know how you got the word. Oh, you were in Ireland. Oh, Larne. And I told you probably. I was the one who had to tell everyone. Right. So it was the 15th. Prabhupada left 7:30 at night, Indian time, on the 14th. But that was, 11 o'clock at night. No, in England, midnight. About midnight. And so we didn't know till the next day, the 15th. Because there was no WhatsApp, believe it or not. And you couldn't telephone. It was like almost humanly impossible to communicate with India by telephone. It's amazing, actually. But the temple president, Vichitravirya Prabhu, called me in, like late morning, something like that, called me into his office and told me Prabhupada has left this world. And it's like, I don't know about you, I wasn't expecting it at all. Even though Prabhupada had been there a few months before, and he was very frail. Wow, he was very frail. But still, we were not expecting it. I wasn't expecting it. Yeah. So at first it was a shock. It was really a shock. And for everyone, it was a shock. And, I remember the first Vyasa Puja the next year, means, like 8-9 months later. And one devotee had been a personal servant of Prabhupada's and wrote an offering in which he's recalling that I do this, then I do that, and then I do this, when he's personally serving Prabhupada. What an experience. There's a few good 200 or 300 devotees in the temple room, and there was not a dry eye in the whole temple room. Just feeling like we're there with Prabhupada. Shoo, amazing. Really amazing. But anyway, this is the thing. At least know that the transcendental reality is that transcendental people are present in their instructions, in their service, in remembrance of them, in prayer to them. They are present really, ultimately, more than they're present in their physical forms. Because who knows? I'm sure in Goloka Vrindavan, Kadamba Kanana Maharaj is not, an elderly man of Dutch extraction or something like that. I mean, don't ask me, but who knows? But he's something like a gopi, a cowherd boy. I mean, we all are. That's the transcendental reality. We're not on the level of realization by any means now, but that's who we actually are. So therefore, in a certain sense, the physical form of the spiritual master can be, I mean, it's possible to say, it's a little misleading. Yeah. And particularly if one becomes overly attached to that, like I mentioned, those devotees, there was quite a number of them. They were very respectable devotees when Prabhupada was present. Suddenly, they just weren't really around because they couldn't adjust to service in separation or love in separation. But actually, as Lord Ram told Mother Sita, it's the highest gift. Yeah. And if one is forced into that position, then you may think that, wow, it's a bit brutal or, heavy shock treatment or something like that. But it's mercy. It's mercy. And a great opportunity to come to a higher level of Krishna consciousness. And we need to come to higher levels of Krishna consciousness. We just have to do that. Otherwise, who knows what's going to happen to us, when our time comes. So these are just a few thoughts. And, at least I can say my own experience of serving Srila Prabhupada in separation. I mean, I found it a lot better than when I was serving him in his physical presence. Really, that's my experience. Someone else, they may have a different experience. But, among many other things, it just proves that Krishna consciousness is real. It just proves it. That, unlike with ordinary people when they die, that's basically it. It's all over. Good night. That's it. Done. It's done. But now, in Krishna consciousness, it goes on. It goes on and it becomes deeper and deeper and more meaningful and real. And then you realize it just confirms what's stated sort of in the theory, so to speak, in the books. So, we're here to help as much as we're able and as much as it's wanted. We're not going to force ourselves on you and sort of, try and drum it into your head. But I really hope that you'll try and consider these things carefully, because they're the transcendental reality. And life without reality, where ignorance is bliss, it's foolish to be wise, but it's never foolish to be wise. It's just ignorance. So,